My favorite mug is cracked, and so is my marriage. I used to sit with this chipped mug every morning. Ethan would make tea, awful tea, but the routine of it was comforting. Lately, all I see are the chipped edges, how the pattern's worn down. It's like a stupid metaphor for how things are between us. Downstairs, even the coffee shop is rubbing salt in the wound. That couple at the corner table? They look so alive. Like the spark between them could light a city on fire. I miss that with Ethan, the easy laughter, the lingering touches. I bet they don't bicker over whose turn it is to clean the damn bathroom. My phone buzzes, and my heart skips a beat. Stupid, it's not Ethan, it's Thomas. Remember Thomas? Old college friend, the funny one, with that smile. Anyway, he texted a ridiculous memory, something about that awful pub crawl our sophomore year. It made me laugh, actually laugh out loud. I probably shouldn't think about that, shouldn't be enjoying the memory, that little jolt of brightness. Work's the same old grind, the kind where even a tiny mistake gets you a lecture like you're in preschool. Ethan used to be my defender, but now? Nothing. It just makes me feel small. The drive home, I can't get Thomas's stupid text out of my head. We shared a moment at some party, a laugh, something. I cling to it like it's proof I'm still fun. Still a person, not just a list of errands and chores. Ethan's late again, already distracted when he walks in. Pizza, mumbled apologies, TV on autopilot. It's like we're speaking different languages. Bills, the cracked siding on the house, who's picking up who's dry cleaning. That's what makes up a conversation now. In bed, it's not exhaustion that keeps me awake. It's this mix of resentment and, God help me, desperation. Am I crazy? Is it normal to miss a life you never had with someone who isn't your husband? I just want to feel something. Anything but this dull ache. So, yeah. My marriage feels about as sturdy as that cracked mug. Okay. I think I'm officially in trouble. This morning, stupid as it sounds, I spent way too long picking an outfit. Something that Ethan might, I don't know, actually notice. Forget it, he mumbled something about my skirt being nice before rushing off. It felt hollow. Worse, at work, this client was being a total creep. Old me would have been furious. Today? Well, the fact that he found me attractive was a twisted little ego boost. Pathetic, right? My marriage is crumbling, and I'm flirting with disaster in the break room. Then, classic, Ethan calls. Of course, not to say hello or ask how my day is. Nope, it's to unload some work drama, expecting me to be his unofficial therapist once again. All that hope I'd started the day with? Poof, gone. But then, Thomas. A dumb meme, a stupid inside joke. All it takes is one text, and I'm smiling. Our chat has this fizz, like we're back in college, not adults with mortgages and stale marriages. Impulsively, recklessly, I ask him to meet for drinks after work. It's innocent, I tell myself. Two old friends catching up. Except it's not. The drinks turn into dinner, which turns into way too late. It shouldn't be this easy to talk to him, to laugh like this. It shouldn't feel this good. Thomas looks at me with this warmth, the kind I haven't seen in Ethan's eyes in years. Walking back to the cars, it happens. Thomas leans in, just a whisper away. A touch, that slight brush of his knuckles against my cheek. Should this feel exciting? Wrong, my heart's pounding, and I don't stop him. I should. But I don't know if I can. This isn't just a crack in my marriage anymore. This is a fault line, and I'm about to fall right in. I'm both a terrible person and the world's worst liar. The guilt hit me like a ton of bricks the second my eyes opened. I'm a wife, for God's sake. But underneath it all, there's this twisted thrill I can't shake. Like I'm riding a roller coaster I know will end badly, yet I can't seem to get off. The worst part? Ethan noticed. Not about Thomas, obviously. But he mentioned how I seemed brighter, my eyes had this sparkle. He sounded happy, damn it. And part of me preened under that attention, even though it came from the very betrayal I'm trying to hide. Then, my phone buzzed. Thomas, his voice alone sent a shiver down my spine. Hey, about last night, stupidly, I grinned before catching myself. It's a work call, I lied to Ethan, making up some nonsense about a project deadline. We're doing it again, a real meetup this time, not some chance encounter. And with every text, every plan we make, it gets harder to pretend this isn't real. We have our own stupid code now, book club, means drinks at that little Winnabar with the dim lighting. I'm practically giddy getting ready. Another carefully chosen outfit, makeup that feels too bold. This is so wrong. But it feels so right. When Ethan asks about my sudden interest in books, it almost feels playful. Almost. There's a flicker in his eyes that wasn't there before, suspicion mingled with uncertainty. And that's the worst part of all, the lies stacking higher every day. Every excuse feels like a brick building a wall between Ethan and me. Part of me is terrified it'll all come crashing down, but the other part? The part lost in the thrill of stolen moments and secret glances? That part doesn't want it to end. I'm becoming a master of deception. It's a skill I never wanted. Deleting texts is second nature now. Outfits that I wear with Thomas get stashed separately for laundry, like I'm some kind of criminal mastermind. Each lie feels heavier, another stitch in the tapestry of deceit I'm weaving around myself. The worst part? Ethan's trying. He's probably sensed this distance, the change. He brought home flowers yesterday, just out of the blue. We even went out for a nice dinner, the kind where we used to talk about dreams, not just bills. It all made the guilt claw its way up my throat. I'm so far gone. Every thoughtful thing he does, it just makes me feel worse. The thrill of this affair? It's curdling, turning into a constant, desperate kind of recklessness. I took a detour on my lunch break the other day, just to see Thomas for 10 minutes. I almost missed a huge deadline at work, brushed it off as stress, not the frantic scrambling for any excuse to see him. My best friend nearly cornered me the other night. She gave me that look, the one that says she knows something's up. I almost spilled it all, the lies, Thomas, everything. But then, fear took over. The shame of admitting what I've become was too much. I played it off, faked a laugh. And now, Ethan's talking about a weekend away. A romantic trip to fix things. It sends my stomach into a freefall. How'd I get out of this? How'd I tell him no without giving the game away? I'm trapped, and the walls are closing in. This weekend getaway is the world's worst idea. Every quaint little shop window. Every happy couple holding hands. It's like a constant, silent accusation. I'm so on edge, I almost jump when a waitress asks if we'd like another bottle of wine. My phone vibrates non-stop. Thomas. Insisting on meeting, even for 5 minutes. Wanting to know how I'm doing, if I'm thinking about him. God, I am. I shouldn't be. The temptation is a gnawing ache in my chest. Dinner is the real nightmare. Candlelight, soft music, the perfect setup for the conversation Ethan keeps trying to start. The future, he says, a house with a yard, maybe even a kid someday. And suddenly, I'm not just feeling guilty, I'm in full meltdown mode. Tears spill out before I can stop them. Ethan panics, his touch hesitant and worried. Am I stressed about work? Is something wrong? And like the coward I am, I nod. I let him believe that's what this is, even as his arms wrap around me in comfort. Later, in that ridiculously cozy hotel room, things get passionate. It's almost like we're performing a play, trying to convince ourselves everything's fine. He's sweet, whispering the things he used to say when we first got together. And I act my part, responding the way I'm supposed to, all while feeling sick to my stomach. The next morning, disaster strikes. We're on some cheesy nature hike, the kind of thing we used to mock and now, apparently, do. My stupid phone slips from my pocket. Ethan, always the gentleman, picks it up. Before I can react, it lights up. A text from Thomas, thinking about you, wish I could see you tonight. And in that moment, I finally see it reflected in Ethan's face. Not just confusion this time, but the gut-wrenching understanding that's been dawning on him for weeks. His world's just shattered, and it's all my fault. Everything just imploded, it's worse than I ever imagined. The hotel room feels claustrophobic, the air thick with accusations, my own self-hatred echoing back at me. He's heartbroken. No, more than that. Shattered. His voice, when he finally manages to speak, is a raw, wounded thing I've never heard before. At first, I lash out. Defensive, you never listened. This has been going on for ages. Stupid, pathetic things like that. But with each word, it's like a part of me crumbles away. All that's left is the truth. I'm a selfish, horrible person. He deserves every ounce of anger he's pouring out, and probably more. When he finally leaves, just walks out on me, there aren't even tears left. Just an awful, empty feeling. And a desperate urge to, what? Fix it? No, too late for that. Escape? In a pathetic, twisted way, I reach out to Thomas. Looking for comfort from the source of my misery. What a joke. His reply is, not what I expected. No sympathy, no whispered promises. It's cold, protective, talk about not getting your happily ever after from a secret affair. Hit home hard. The rest of the night is a blur. Hotel room minibar rated out of desperation, not even pleasure. Each text I try to send Ethan goes undrafted, deleted again and again. My thoughts spin. Despair, self-loathing, but also a sliver of something different. A terrible, brutal clarity about the choices I've made. By morning, my head is pounding. Back home the next day, the house is a ghost of itself. No Ethan. Just a half-packed suitcase on our bed, a testament to the life I just blew up. Then, my phone buzzes. An unknown number. My breath catches, expecting Ethan. But it's a photo. Me and Thomas, that night in the parking lot, our faces too close. Just one more message follows. You reap what you sow, and that's it, that's the end, there's nowhere left to hide. Turns out, when your world collapses, there's no instruction manual. That photo, those words, it's not just guilt anymore. Now, I'm genuinely terrified. Who sent it? Someone who knows about me and Thomas, obviously. Someone who hates me enough to want me to suffer. Is it someone on Ethan's side? Or maybe the scorned ex of some other fling of Thomas's that I never knew about? The fear is motivating, in a twisted way. It pushes me out of the numb paralysis. Something has to change. I finally reach out to my best friend, spilling the whole ugly truth. The silence on the other end of the line is brutal. But she comes through. Support, yes, but also shock, hurt lacing her voice. We've been friends since college, and I've trashed that with my lies. Then, the voicemail. To Ethan, not some grand plea for a fresh start, because let's be real, that ship has sailed. I just apologize, over and over, my voice raw and pathetic. I don't even ask for his response. Just needed to say it. The waiting game is torture. Empty days. My phone feels like a ticking time bomb. Will it be Ethan finally calling, or that unknown number with another threat? And who do I even turn to? A therapist seems like a good long-term solution for my clearly broken brain. But what about right now? Do I brace myself and preemptively get a divorce lawyer? What a freaking mess. It's not just the emotional earthquake, though. There are bills to figure out, belongings that might need splitting, a whole new life to build on the rubble of the old one. I'm so far out of my depth it's ridiculous. Life after the bomb feels a lot like picking through the wreckage, looking for anything that might be salvageable. Just when I'd resigned myself to the empty apartment, I find it. A note on the kitchen counter, Ethan's handwriting. Just a shopping list, but so mundane, so normal. Proof he's been here since I left, and maybe that means there's the tiniest sliver of hope left. The therapy sessions are an emotional minefield. Unpacking the guilt, obvious. But also the shame, which somehow feels worse, more permanent. And there's this flicker I'm almost scared to acknowledge, a sense of self-preservation kicking in now that the dust is settling. Like, maybe it's not just about hating myself forever. This town is not big enough for a secret like this. People stare, or look away real quick. Some ladies I barely know offer platitudes and prayers and casseroles in equal measure, making the discomfort even worse. Then a package arrives. My favorite cracked mug, carefully repaired. The kind of thing Ethan would do, back when we actually talked. No note. No clue who sent it. Just this symbol of something? An attempt to fix things? A reminder I can't put the pieces of my life back together so easily? My anger flares up enough to finally call Thomas. But this time, I'm not looking for comfort. I rip into him. Tell him how worthless he is, how he used me, all of it. When I hang up, there's no satisfaction though, just a fresh wave of exhaustion washing over me. Nights are the worst, replaying every conversation, every stolen glance with Thomas, now twisted into ugly memories stained with regret. But also revisiting fights with Ethan, quiet nights when the distance between us grew so vast I can hardly believe I didn't see it sooner. And then, my phone rings. Number withheld, like I half expect some new message of torment. It takes all my courage to answer it. And it isn't the unknown sender. It's Ethan's mother. Her voice is tight, but she cares, in her own formal way. That feels different, like maybe I haven't destroyed every human connection I had. Maybe I'm stuck in a really uncomfortable purgatory. We met, Ethan and I, not at home, couldn't face that space with its memories of happy mornings and shattered promises. We picked a neutral, painfully cheerful coffee shop. The first words were stilted, awkward. You could cut the tension with a knife. It turns out the blackmail photos were sent by a mutual friend. Someone who saw me and Thomas that night, and took it upon themselves to try and shake things up, I guess. Stupidly, briefly, I feel relieved. Not a vengeful ex, a random creep. But then, guilt washes over me again. So many people hurt because of my choices. No grand declarations from either of us. Ethan doesn't forgive me, doesn't say he wants to try. Just a quiet agreement to talk again sometime. Maybe, if we can figure out a way to move past this. The rest of my life feels just as suspended. Volunteering has become my new obsession. Not some grand gesture, but a genuine need to make amends, on some level. Putting out into the world some of the good I should have been doing all along. Then, out of the blue, a text from Thomas. I'm sorry. For everything. Lame. Too little, way too late. But still, it's like a tiny piece of a puzzle slotting into place, the end of something. The need to scream at him fades, replaced by a tired sort of acceptance. The practicalities are almost as draining as the emotions. New locks, changing passwords, awkwardly informing bosses and family. Building a new life, one logistical step at a time. And there's light, too, if I squint. A laugh with my friend that feels genuine. A morning run where my legs just take over, the rhythm clearing my head for the first time in ages. It's there, the possibility of okay again. Just a long, hard road to get there. Turns out, rebuilding a life from scratch doesn't come with a roadmap. Another meeting with Ethan. Weeks have passed, and it's different now. Still so much hurt, but the white-hot anger has simmered down into something sadder, more complex. We both try, I think. To explain, to listen, but mostly, just to figure out if there's anything left in the rubble worth salvaging. Therapy, the dreaded word. Individual sessions feel like peeling back layers of myself I never wanted to see. The couples counseling, it's a start. But sometimes it just feels like two damaged people desperately trying to put words to a situation there's no fixing. I've started writing, not some dramatic tell-all confession, but messy, confused pages filled with questions, memories. Trying to understand the woman I became, the choices she made. It hurts, but in a cleansing, exhausting way. Then there's the big question hanging over everything. Stay together, try to rebuild something out of this wreckage of trust? Or cut the ties and try to start again, each of us on our own? We need a decision, eventually. But I still don't know my own answer, let alone his. The world demands something normal from me. Tonight, there's a work thing I have to attend. I dread it, feel 100 eyes on me, wondering what happened, pitying or judging. Yet, forcing myself to go also feels like a tiny act of rebellion. My life's a mess, but it's not over. Today, a box arrived. Clothes, books, the little reminders of a shared life that Ethan packed up. Is it a parting gift? A cruel reminder? Or maybe a chance for a clean break? That's where I'm at, crossroads everywhere, it's my turn to choose which way the next steps go. I'm scared, I'm exhausted, but there's the tiniest bit of hope too. It's going to be a hell of a climb back to something resembling okay, but maybe, just maybe. So, you're not gonna believe this. I got caught up in some internet flirting, thinking it was all just a game. Next thing I know, it's spiraled out of control, dragging me into a mess of blackmail and secrets. And the craziest part? My hubby's somehow okay with it. Stick around, 'cause this story? It's a wild ride through the ups and downs of getting way too carried away online. It all started. One day, out of sheer boredom, I found myself typing away on my laptop. I was supposed to be doing research for a novel I kept telling myself I'd write one day. But let's be real, that novel wasn't going to write itself, especially not with the way I was procrastinating. Instead, I ended up on one of those chat sites, just messing around. I told myself it was harmless fun, a way for a stay-at-home mom to have a little excitement in her day. Days turned into weeks without me even noticing. That's when Alex came into the picture. He was just another bored soul on the internet, but his playful banter was different. It was like he knew exactly what to say to light up the part of me I thought had gone out for good after kids and years of marriage. At home, life went on as usual. Ben, my husband, kept working his 2 jobs, always with a smile, trying to build that perfect life we'd always talked about. But sitting across from him at dinner, I found my mind wandering. I was craving excitement, something different, something more. Then, one night, maybe the wine got to my head, or maybe I was just tired of the same old routine, I took a leap I never thought I'd take. I sent Alex a selfie. Nothing too crazy, but still, it was a line I never thought I'd cross. The rush of excitement was immediate, his compliments making my heart race in a way it hadn't in years. I was burning up with shame, sure, but also with a thrill I couldn't deny. Alex became my secret escape. Every day, his words were like a lifeline, pulling me further away from the monotony of daily life. The kids' laughter, the endless chores, the noise of the house, it all just faded into the background. I was living for those stolen moments online, caught up in a world that felt as vivid as it was forbidden. Just when I thought things couldn't get any more complicated, they did. Guilt started to eat away at me, gnawing at the edges of my happiness like a relentless pest. Every time I logged off, I'd tell myself, that's it. No more. But those promises? They piled up, ignored and forgotten, just like the stack of unopened mail gathering dust on our kitchen counter. The whispers started late at night, stolen moments when the rest of the world was asleep. Alex and we'd talk on the phone, our voices low and intimate, painting pictures so vivid, it felt like we were living in our own private movie. It was cheating in surround sound, a thrilling but dangerous game. Sarah, my best friend since forever, started picking up on the change in me. She'd look at me with those knowing eyes, asking what was up. I'd dodge her questions, brush them off with a laugh or a quick subject change. But the lies, they weighed heavy on my tongue, making each word feel like it was coded in lead. Then, out of the blue, Ben announced he'd planned a surprise weekend getaway for just the two of us. My stomach twisted into knots, not with excitement but dread. How was I supposed to explain this to Alex? My mind raced for excuses, but nothing seemed right. In the end, I settled on a work emergency. It was the best I could come up with on short notice. But Alex, he didn't buy it. The suspicion was evident in his texts, a stark contrast to his usual charm. His words, once a source of escape, now felt like a trap, closing in on me with every message. The thrill of our secret exchanges was quickly overshadowed by the mounting fear of being caught. I was stuck between two worlds, and with every passing moment, the bridge between them seemed to crumble a little more. The weekend getaway that was supposed to rekindle the spark between Ben and me turned out to be a disaster. Every gentle touch from him felt cold, distant, as if I was miles away, wrapped up in the fiery illusion of Alex's presence. It was as if Alex was there, a ghost between us, his words burning through me, leaving me more confused and divided than ever. Coming home wasn't any easier. The house felt smaller, suffocating, as if it was closing in on me, filled with the echoes of my deceit. I knew what I had to do, I had to end things with Alex. But when I finally mustered up the courage to do it, he cornered me with an ultimatum that I never saw coming. Meet me, or it's all over. The words echoed in my mind, a relentless loop that fueled my anxiety and fear. In a moment of sheer desperation, I found myself concocting a lie about needing a night out with Sarah. Ben, bless his heart, kissed me goodbye, trust shining in his eyes. It was a look that pierced through me, making the lie taste even more bitter. I felt like I was sinking further into a quagmire of my own making. The restaurant Alex chose was the epitome of intimacy, dimly lit with candles flickering on each table, casting shadows that played tricks on my eyes. When I really saw him for the first time, he wasn't at all like the man I had imagined. He was older, with a nervous glint in his eyes that immediately made my stomach churn with apprehension. This wasn't the Alex I thought I knew, the one who had seemed so charming and confident through text. Reality was now sitting across from me, and it was far from what I had fantasized. I told myself, just drinks. That's all this is. But as the night wore on, the alcohol seemed to fuel a reckless abandon I hadn't planned on. His touch, when it finally came, was clumsy, a stark contrast to the fantasy that had played out in my mind. It was a wake-up call, a cold splash of reality that made me question everything. The illusion of Alex had been a thrilling escape, but now, faced with the truth, all I felt was an overwhelming desire to flee back to the safety of my real life, no matter how mundane it seemed. The night with Alex ended in a way I could have never anticipated. I stumbled home in the early hours, my clothes clinging to the scent of cheap cologne and an overwhelming sense of self-loathing. Ben was asleep, lying with his back to me, forming a physical and emotional barrier I had never felt before. It was a silent testament to the distance I had created between us, a chasm I wasn't sure could be bridged. In a moment of desperate clarity, I deleted Alex's number from my phone. My fingers trembled as I pressed delete, but I knew deep down it wasn't enough. He knew too much, had become too entangled in the fabric of my life. The fear that he might reach out, unwilling to let go, turned my days into a blur of paranoia. Every unexpected phone call, every unknown email, sent my heart into a frenzy of fear. Then, the moment I had been dreading yet somehow knew was inevitable, arrived. Ben's voice, usually warm and gentle, was cold, distant. "We need to talk," he said, and those 4 words felt like a death knell to the life we had built together. He had found Alex's messages on an old tablet I had forgotten about. The evidence of my betrayal laid bare for him to see. The world as I knew it shattered in that instant. The ensuing conversation was a maelstrom of tears, accusations, and the raw, palpable pain in Ben's eyes. Every apology I uttered felt hollow, even to my own ears. I could see the trust we had spent years building crumble in front of me, each word I said only serving to deepen the wound. My betrayal wasn't just a moment of weakness, it was a grenade that had exploded, leaving nothing but devastation in its wake. The aftermath was like living in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. My first instinct was to call Sarah, seeking the solace of her comforting voice, but what greeted me was a tone so strained and distant, it felt like a slap. Her words, usually so full of warmth and understanding, now carried a weight of judgment I couldn't bear. It was a stark reminder that my actions had consequences reaching far beyond my own immediate world. Ben, unable to face me, decided to stay with his brother. I watched him go, each step he took away from our home felt like a piece of our life together being torn away. The kids, too, looked at me with eyes full of confusion and distrust. They didn't need to know the specifics to understand that something deeply troubling was happening, their innocence caught in the crossfire of adult mistakes. Then, as if things couldn't get any worse, a letter arrived that sent chills down my spine. Alex, the man I had convinced myself was just a harmless escape, was now blackmailing me. The photos I had thoughtlessly sent, believing them to be inconsequential, were now a weapon aimed straight at my already crumbling life. The room seemed to spin around me as I read his demands. Money, a substantial amount, or Ben would receive a surprise gift that would shatter whatever fragile hope I harbored of rebuilding our life together. Swallowing my pride, I reached out to my parents. The conversation was one of the hardest I've ever had, their voices heavy with a disappointment so palpable it cut deeper than any display of anger could. Despite everything, they offered their support, a lifeline in the storm that my life had become. Panic became my constant companion, gnawing at me with relentless jaws. Alex's deadline loomed over me, a ticking time bomb threatening to destroy what little I had left. My mind raced, desperate to find a solution. Where could I get the money? How could I protect my family from the fallout of my actions? The questions circled in my head, each one a reminder of the steep price of my indiscretions. In a moment that felt both surreal and desperately sad, I found myself sorting through my jewelry box. Each piece, once a symbol of love and happier times, now felt cold and lifeless in my hands. It was a tangible measure of how far I had fallen, trading tokens of Ben's affection for a chance to bury my betrayal. The weight of what I was about to do pressed down on me, making it hard to breathe. The pawn shop was exactly as you'd expect. A place where hope comes to die, filled with the scent of desperation and broken dreams. I left with a wad of cash in my hand, the tangible proof of my sacrifice. But as I stepped back onto the street, I felt smaller, diminished. My soul, if such a thing was still mine to claim, felt tarnished, sold off piece by piece with the jewelry I no longer deserved to wear. Meeting Alex again was an ordeal I barely survived. Handing over the money, I watched his smirk spread across his face, a look of vile triumph that made my stomach churn. He assured me the photos were deleted, that I had bought my silence. As I walked away, a tiny, naive part of me dared to hope that maybe, just maybe, this nightmare was finally over. Yet, the rational part of my mind whispered a warning. This kind of poison doesn't just disappear, it lingers, tainting everything it touches. Just when I thought I was completely alone in this, Sarah reached out. Her voice was stiff, the words awkward, but beneath the discomfort, I sensed the old friend I knew. Despite everything, she offered a lifeline. To babysit the kids so Ben and I could have the conversation that loomed over us like a storm cloud. Her offer was a beacon of hope in the darkness, a reminder that even in our worst moments, the possibility of forgiveness and redemption exists. It was a small step, perhaps, but in the depths of my despair, it felt like a chance to start mending the fractures, not just in my marriage, but within myself. Facing Ben that evening was one of the hardest things I've ever done. The air between us was charged with an unspoken tension that made every moment feel like an eternity. When he finally spoke, the absence of anger in his voice was more devastating than any outburst could have been. His hurt was palpable, a visible wound that words seemed inadequate to address. "Do you love him?" His question cut through the silence, whispered so softly it was almost drowned out by the sound of my own heartbeat. In that moment, I was torn between confessing the pathetic truth and fabricating a lie that might, by some miracle, salvage the remnants of our life together. I chose to confess, to lay bare the extent of my betrayal, though I couldn't bring myself to admit the blackmail. The omission felt like a small mercy in the face of the overwhelming shame that threatened to consume me. Ben's reaction was a mixture of pain and resignation. "I need time," he said, his voice breaking the spell of our confrontation before he turned away, retreating once again to the refuge of his brother's place. The next day, when I thought things couldn't get any worse, the school called. My son had been involved in a fight, a physical altercation born from the cruel whispers and rumors that had begun to circulate. The harsh reality of my actions impacting my children hit me with a force I hadn't anticipated. Picking him up from school, I saw his tear-stained face, the physical embodiment of the pain my selfishness had caused. It was a sight that pierced through me, an arrow strayed to my heart. The guilt that had been my constant companion morphed into a burning rage directed not at myself, as it had been, but at Alex. He was the catalyst, the one who had exploited my vulnerability, turned my life into something unrecognizable. The drive home was silent, a quiet before the storm of reckoning I knew was coming. In the aftermath of everything, my sister became an unexpected beacon of wisdom. Her suggestion to consult a lawyer seemed so out of place in the life I thought I knew, a life that once revolved around school runs and neighborhood barbecues, not legal battles and threats. Yet, there I was, walking into a lawyer's office that felt as cold and impersonal as my current reality. The documents laid out in front of me were a blur of legal jargon. Words like separation and assets felt like physical blows, each one a stark reminder of how far things had spiraled out of control. I signed where I was told, my signature shaky, betraying the turmoil inside. Fueled by a mix of fear and newfound fury, I found myself dialing Alex's number. I had nothing planned, no real threat to wield, but the anger boiling within me demanded release. When he answered, my words were a torrent, threats of police action and exposure spilling out in a desperate attempt to regain some semblance of control over the chaos he'd brought into my life. His response was a cold, mocking laughter. "You think you can scare me? I have nothing to lose, sweetheart." His words were like ice water, dousing the flames of my anger and leaving me with a chilling realization of the gravity of my situation. Then, as if to prove his point, new photos landed in my inbox. Not just any photos, the ones I'd prayed would never see the light of day. His threat was not an idle one. He was fully prepared to escalate things further, to drag me down into the abyss with him. The despair that followed was all-consuming, a dark cloud that threatened to suffocate the last remnants of hope I had clung to. The realization that I was entirely at his mercy was a bitter pill, one that left me questioning every choice that had led me to this point. In a heart-wrenching moment of surrender, my parents came to take the kids. The look of disappointment and shame in their eyes as they gathered their grandchildren and their belongings was a reflection of how deeply I had failed them. It was a look that said they were protecting them from me, not just from the situation. The weight of that realization nearly crushed me. That night, Sarah showed up at my door, armed with takeout and a bottle of wine, her way of braving the storm with me. We drank more than we ate, the alcohol fueling a false sense of camaraderie between us. It was a desperate attempt to find solace in each other's company, to momentarily forget the chaos my life had become. The following day, Ben came by to pick up some of his things. His movements around our home were curt, each one a deliberate attempt to minimize his presence in a space we once shared so intimately. The distance between us felt insurmountable, a chasm widened by hurt and betrayal. Words were unnecessary, the silence spoke volumes. Later, in a bid to find some semblance of hope, I turned to the internet. I searched for stories of women who had faced similar betrayals, looking for anything that might resemble a lifeline. What I found was both a source of comfort and a terrifying glimpse into what my future could hold. It was a reminder that I wasn't alone, yet it also underscored the long, arduous road ahead. Then, out of nowhere, Alex called from a blocked number. The menace in his voice was unmistakable, his words sharp and calculated. His demands had escalated, he was no longer content with just tormenting me privately. Now, he threatened to expose me to our entire community, to turn my already crumbling world into a spectacle for all to see. The call ended with his chilling laughter, leaving me frozen in fear, unsure of how to protect myself from the storm that was about to break. In a last-ditch effort to find some semblance of a strategy, I reached out to a local teacher who had gone through her own nightmare with a vengeful ex spreading her private life online. Her advice was chilling yet filled with the kind of grim determination that comes from having survived the worst. She spoke of resilience, of fighting back not just for her sake but to ensure that others could find a voice through her ordeal. Her story was a beacon in my darkness, a reminder that survival was possible, albeit with scars. Following a discussion fraught with legal jargon and the stark reality of my situation, my lawyer suggested filing for a restraining order against Alex. It felt like being handed a shield made of paper to defend against an onslaught of arrows, but it was something, an acknowledgement of the threat Alex posed and a step towards reclaiming my life. Sleep became an elusive companion. The nights stretched on endlessly, every sound magnified into a potential threat. The rustling of leaves outside my window wasn't just the wind, it was Alex, lurking in the shadows, waiting. The nightmares that once plagued my sleep now bled into my waking hours, a constant reminder of the terror that had taken root in my life. Then, an anonymous package arrived. My hands trembled as I opened it to find printouts of the most explicit messages I'd ever exchanged with Alex. Among the pages, a single word scrawled in red ink stood out: soon. The message was clear, a promise of exposure and humiliation, a ticking time bomb waiting to detonate. As if on cue, the doorbell rang. Frozen in place, I couldn't force myself to move. My mind raced with possibilities. Was it Ben, standing on the other side of the door with divorce papers in hand, ready to sever the last ties that bound us together? Could it be the police, come with questions or, worse, accusations? Or was it Alex, emboldened and ready to escalate his threats into action? The weight of the unknown pressed down on me, a heavy curtain of fear and anticipation that left me paralyzed, unable to move towards the door to face whatever, or whoever. The night was supposed to be about us, celebrating 5 years since we said, "I do," in that little chapel downtown. Alex and I found ourselves at our go-to Italian bistro, the one with the checkered tablecloths and the candles that always burned a little too fast. He handed me a small box, his eyes lighting up the way they did when he was particularly proud of something. Inside was a necklace, simple but elegant, exactly my style. "Happy anniversary, Mia," he said, his voice steady and warm. I reached across the table, my own gift in hand, a vintage watch he'd mentioned wanting years ago. His surprise was genuine, and for a moment, everything felt perfect. But life's got a funny way of showing you just how quickly perfect can turn to complicated. The next day, it was back to our routines. Me at the library, surrounded by books and quiet whispers, and Alex out in the field, his hands always busy fixing something. Ordinary, yes, but it was our kind of ordinary, comfortable and reassuring. That weekend, we threw one of our infamous BBQs, our backyard a melting pot of our friends from all walks of life. Laughter filled the air, mingling with the smell of grilled food. "You two are goals," someone shouted over the music, a sentiment echoed by nods and smiles. If only they knew what was lurking around the corner. I wanted to keep that high going, so I planned a surprise for Alex, a visit to a local photography exhibition. Art was our escape, a shared passion that had drawn us closer over the years. As we walked through the gallery, his hand in mine, I remembered why I fell in love with him. But as they say, when you're busy making plans, life happens. And happen it did. While organizing a charity event at the library, I met Leo. Charismatic, engaging Leo, with a laugh that filled the room and ideas that sparked my own. We clicked instantly and dangerously. Our planning sessions for the charity event started to stretch longer, filled with personal stories and shared jokes. I told myself it was all for a good cause. Alex noticed my late nights, his brow furrowed in concern rather than suspicion. "Everything okay?" he asked one evening, the TV casting shadows across the living room. "Just work stuff," I lied, feeling the weight of each word. "The charity event's taking up more time than I thought." He nodded, trusting me completely, and my heart sank a little lower. The true test came when my phone buzzed during one of our rare movie nights. I saw Leo's name light up the screen, a simple, "Hey, can we talk?" That felt like a sledgehammer to my chest. Alex glanced at it, then back at the screen, saying nothing. His silence was deafening, and in that moment, I realized just how far I'd strayed from the woman who sat across from him at that bistro, celebrating love and commitment. The chapter closes on a night filled with unsaid words and unseen messages, the beginning of a descent that neither Mia nor Alex could have predicted. The moment our lips touched, I knew I had crossed a line I couldn't uncross. Leo and I, hidden away in the dim light of the library's back office, were worlds away from the life I had pledged to with Alex. It was reckless, a moment fueled by longing and excitement I hadn't felt in years. As I drove home that night, the thrill of the kiss battled with a gnawing guilt in my stomach. I started crafting stories, elaborate tales of work trips and conferences that didn't exist. "Another seminar this weekend, babe," I'd say, watching Alex's face for any sign of doubt. He'd nod, offering a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes anymore. Leo, on the other hand, was insatiable, his texts lighting up my phone day and night, pulling me further away from the life I knew. Alex's patience began to wear thin. I could feel his suspicion growing, an unspoken tension building between us. One morning, as I left for another conference, I caught him watching me from the window, his silhouette a silent question mark against the glass. That day, he decided to follow me, but the bustling city swallowed me whole, keeping my secrets safe for a little while longer. But secrets have a way of surfacing. A forgotten hotel receipt became my undoing when Alex found it tucked in my coat pocket. "A work expense," I lied, straight to his face. The trust in his eyes flickered and died, replaced by a hurt I had never seen before. Yet, he said nothing more, his silence a deafening verdict. Driven by a mix of hurt and suspicion, Alex took matters into his own hands. A GPS tracker, hidden beneath the guise of routine car maintenance, became his eyes when he couldn't be there. And soon enough, the digital breadcrumbs led him straight to Leo's doorstep, a place my car had visited far too often to be innocent. Confronted with the undeniable truth of my betrayal, I tried to sever ties with Leo. "We can't do this anymore," I whispered, the finality of the words sinking into my heart. But Leo wasn't ready to let go. His promises of a future together were seductive, a balm to the guilt and uncertainty gnawing at me. "We're meant to be," he'd insist, pulling me back in every time I tried to step away. Each promise, each stolen moment with Leo, added another layer to the web of lies I was entangled in. The guilt of my betrayal weighed heavily on me, a constant shadow in a life that had once been filled with light. I can't shake this feeling of dread as I pack my bags for the weekend. It's supposed to be a getaway with Leo, a break from everything ordinary and a dive into this affair that's consumed me. "It's a work retreat," I lie smoothly to Alex, avoiding his gaze. There's a flicker of something in his eyes, doubt, hurt, suspicion, but he doesn't voice it. As I drive away, the pit in my stomach grows. Something's off, but I push the thought aside, focusing on the road ahead. Unbeknownst to me, Alex is unraveling my web of lies. He's collected a damning array of evidence, photos, messages, all pilfered from my phone. The trust we built over years, crumbling in his hands like dust. His heart is breaking, but there's a resolve in his eyes, a determination to face this head-on. He plans the confrontation meticulously, each step heavy with the weight of our shared history. The day feels too long, and my nerves are frayed by the time I arrive at Leo's. There's an excitement in his greeting, but I'm distracted, uneasy. My phone's been eerily quiet, Alex's usual check and texts conspicuously absent. It's as if the universe is holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable explosion. And then it happens. There's a knock at the door, forceful, unexpected. Leo, puzzled, glances at me before answering. The color drains from my face when I see Alex standing there, a storm of emotion in his eyes. He doesn't wait for an invitation, stepping inside, his gaze locked on me. The evidence is in his hands, a physical manifestation of my betrayal. My heart races, panic setting in. Words fail me as he lays out photo after photo, message after message. Leo tries to interject, to justify what's been going on, but Alex's focus doesn't waver from me. His pain is palpable, a tangible thing that fills the room and suffocates me. I scramble for explanations, excuses, anything to lessen the blow. Alex, it wasn't supposed to, my voice trails off, the hollowness of my words echoing back at me. There's no justification, no reasoning that could mend the chasm I've created. Alex's eyes search mine, looking for the woman he married, but she's buried under layers of lies and deceit. The confrontation is heated, our voices raising, but it's the silence that follows each accusation that's the most deafening. Leo's presence suddenly feels suffocating, his earlier charm now just a reminder of everything I've jeopardized. Alex's disappointment is a weight I can't bear, his words cutting deeper than I imagined possible. The fallout of my actions stands before me, undeniable and irrevocable. In this moment of truth, the facade crumbles, leaving me exposed and ashamed. The realization of what I've lost, what I've done, settles heavy in my heart, a burden I'll carry long after Alex walks out the door. The moment Alex's back turned on me, it felt like the final nail in the coffin of our marriage. His words, "Collect your things," echoed in my mind as I drove back to his house. The silence of the drive was a stark contrast to the chaos of emotions raging within me. My hands trembled on the steering wheel, a mix of fear, regret, and an overwhelming sense of loss gripping me. Stepping into the house, I was met with a void. The photos of us, the knickknacks collected over the years, even the cozy throw blanket we'd cuddle under were gone. It was as if I had never existed in Alex's life, every trace of our shared memories meticulously erased. The emptiness of the space mirrored the hollowness I felt inside. Desperate for some kind of reconciliation, I reached for my phone, only to find Alex had blocked me. Calls, texts, social media, every avenue cut off. The finality of that action hit me harder than I expected. I was truly alone in this, the magnitude of what I'd done crashing down on me. I sought refuge where I thought I'd find comfort, in Leo's arms. But moving in with him only highlighted the cracks in what I had convinced myself was a solid foundation. Our relationship, once thrilling in its secrecy, now felt suffocating. Without the thrill of sneaking around, we were just two people, realizing we didn't know each other at all. It wasn't just Alex I had lost. Friends who had cheered for our marriage, who had been part of our life, looked at me differently now. Their distance was palpable, a social exile that left me navigating this new reality alone. Conversations dried up, invites stopped coming, and one by one, I felt the threads of my old life slip away. Living with Leo, I struggled to find my footing. Our conversations, once filled with excitement and anticipation, now circled around mundane realities and awkward silences. It dawned on me that our connection had been a facade, built on the adrenaline of forbidden encounters rather than any real compatibility. This new chapter of my life was nothing like I had envisioned. The isolation, both from Alex and my friends, was a bitter pill to swallow. I had traded a life built on years of love and trust for a mirage that vanished with the light of day. Left to navigate the consequences of my actions, I faced a future uncertain and alone, a stark reminder of the cost of my choices. The moment I got the call, I knew my life at the library was over. "Mia, it's not just about the missed days, it's everything," my boss said, her voice heavy with a mix of pity and disappointment. The job I loved, the one thing that kept me anchored through the chaos, slipped through my fingers because I couldn't keep my personal life from spilling over. Then, the divorce papers arrived, a stark, unyielding confirmation of the end. Signing them felt like signing away pieces of myself, pieces I'd never get back. Alex had filed for divorce, and I was served as if I were just another stranger in his life now. I showed up to the proceedings alone, a stark contrast to the life we had shared, surrounded by friends and family. The courtroom was cold, the finality of the judge's words echoing long after I left. Seeing Alex after the divorce was accidental, a momentary glimpse of him across the street, laughing, the weight of the past seemingly lifted from his shoulders. The sight of him moving on without me twisted the knife of regret even deeper. I had lost everything: my husband, my home, my job, and now, even the illusion that maybe, just maybe, Alex was as miserable as I was. Life with Leo became strained, the excitement that once fueled our affair dimming into the mundane reality of day-to-day life. We bickered over trivial things, our arguments a stark reminder that what we had wasn't built to last. The thrill was gone, and in its place was just emptiness. And then, the ultimate betrayal: I found out Leo was seeing someone else. The irony wasn't lost on me, the cheater cheated. Confronting him was messy, a cacophony of accusations and denials that ended with Leo walking out the door for the last time. The breakup was bitter, the taste of my own medicine more bitter than I could have imagined. Alone, jobless, and now twice betrayed, the walls of the life I'd built with Alex, and later with Leo, crumbled around me. Each brick laid by lies and deceit, now just rubble at my feet. The realization that I had been the architect of my own downfall was a pill too hard to swallow. The morning light barely filters through the blinds of my new, sparsely furnished apartment in a city where no one knows my name. It's a fresh start, or at least, that's the plan. Standing in front of the mirror, I practice my introduction. Hi, I'm Mia, hoping to leave the weight of my past behind with each word. But the truth is, starting over isn't as easy as packing up and moving to a new place. My reputation, or rather the shadow of the person I used to be, seems to linger, a ghost following me from one job interview to the next. I reached out to old friends, hopeful for a bridge over troubled waters, but the damage done was too great, the chasm too wide. Their polite refusals, or worse, the silence that greeted my attempts at reconciliation, were clear signs that some bridges were burnt beyond repair. In an effort to find some semblance of peace, I started attending counseling sessions. Sitting in a room, stripped of all pretenses, I confronted the guilt and shame head-on. The therapist's office became a sanctuary of sorts, a place where I could unpack the baggage of my choices without judgment. Driven by a need to make amends, even if only to myself, I began volunteering at a local charity. It wasn't the library, but it was something. Sorting through donations, I found purpose in the anonymity of service, hoping that each act of kindness could somehow balance the scales of my past misdeeds. Yet, despite these efforts, loneliness cloaked me like a second skin. In this new city, the freedom from my past came at the cost of connection. The faces around me were friendly but distant, making it painfully clear that starting anew meant walking a solitary path, at least for now. That solitude eased the day I walked into a local animal shelter and locked eyes with a dog that seemed as lost as I was. Something in her gaze spoke to me, a silent understanding of what it meant to be left behind. Adopting her was an impulse, but one of the few decisions lately that felt right. She became a constant presence, her wagging tail a reminder that not all was lost. As I sit on the floor of my new living room, my dog curled up beside me, I can't help but reflect on the journey that led me here. The choices I made, the people I hurt, and the long road to redemption I've only just begun to walk. This city, with all its strangers and possibilities, offers a blank slate I'm not sure I deserve, but I'm determined to try. For the first time in a long time, I feel a flicker of hope, a chance to rebuild not just my life, but myself. The day I decided to start a blog was the day I chose to take my narrative back. It was a leap, typing out the truths I'd hidden behind closed doors, pouring every mistake, every regret into a digital confessional. Maybe this will help someone, I thought, hitting publish on my first post. The anonymity of the internet gave me a voice when I felt like I had none, allowing me to share my story without the weight of judgment. To my surprise, messages began to trickle in. Strangers from all corners of the web, sharing their own tales of heartbreak, betrayal, and the messy journey of self-forgiveness. Each notification was a reminder that I wasn't alone in my fight to find solid ground in the aftermath of my decisions. This virtual community became my solace, a place where understanding bridged the gap between strangers. Life took on a new rhythm when I started working at a local bookstore. The smell of old pages, the quiet hum of customers lost in aisles of stories, it was a haven from the chaos of the past months. Books had always been my escape, and now they offered a semblance of normalcy, a reminder that there was a world beyond my own turmoil. But moving forward didn't mean I could erase the past. News of Alex, snippets of a life continuing without me, reached my ears like echoes of a song we used to dance to. The sting of learning about his engagement through the grapevine was sharp, a closure I hadn't realized I needed until it was thrust upon me. The urge to reach out, to seek forgiveness, was overwhelming. Yet, deep down, I knew some doors had to remain closed, some paths untaken for healing to truly begin. In the quiet moments, in the space between the hustle of starting over and the stillness of night, I found a measure of peace. Accepting my past, embracing my faults, and learning to live with the consequences of my actions became my new focus. Personal growth wasn't just a goal, it was a necessity, a way to ensure that the lessons learned weren't in vain. Now, as I stand at my window, looking out over a city that's become my refuge, I reflect on the journey that led me here. The lights below mirror the stars above, a vast expanse of lives moving forward, each with their own stories of downfall and redemption. Mine is but one in a sea of many, a narrative marked by mistakes but defined by the resilience to rise from them. Acknowledging my downfall without seeking redemption from anyone but myself has been the hardest yet most liberating part of my journey. In the end, it's the peace found in solitude, the strength drawn from reflection, and the hope of a new day that carry me forward. The road to redemption is long and winding, but for the first time, I'm ready to walk it, one step at a time, with a heart open to the lessons